What is up, everybody, and welcome to the All-NBA Show presented by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet at FanDuel.com/All-NBA. I'm your host, Adam Mares, and I'm joined by my esteemed colleague, Tim Legler, the busiest man in the NBA, the hardest working man in the NBA, Tim Legler. Legs, no games last night, so we get to step back and talk big picture about the NBA.
There you go. It's one of those rare nights, man. That the in-season tournament has kind of created that situation now. So you're right. No games to look at. So you start to take a breath. Emirates Cup's over, and now you start to really look at what's about to happen in the league. And I think that's going to be a big focus on our show today.
Absolutely, man. And it is weird because the All-Star break, it always, you think of it as halfway in between, the halfway mark of the season, but it's not. It's 2/3 the way through the season. Now the Emirates Cup creates this 1/3 break in the season, so it almost breaks the season into 3 chunks. We're hopping into the second of the 3 chunks here. And on today's show, we're going to give some shout-outs. We're going to talk about the team that we both agreed independently is the most interesting team over this, middle chunk of the season. We independently came up with the exact same team. We're going to give our all standout team, give a little bit of shine to people who have stood out to us that we did not necessarily expect. But we're going to start today's show by making some predictions. It's always fun to make some predictions about the NBA season. I have 3. Legs has 3. Do you want to go first, or do you want to hear my brilliant predictions first?
I'd rather hear your brilliance first. That's since you set it up that way. Let's go there.
My first one is not bold at all. This is a one pepper take here, in my opinion. I think that the Boston Celtics are going to end up 5 games up of the Cleveland Cavaliers for the 1 seed in the East the remainder of the season. They're currently 1 game behind. The Cavs are 23-4, playing great basketball, have one of the best point differentials in all the NBA, I think number 2. And yet, I think they are going to fall way behind the Boston Celtics by the time we do this again, maybe in 2-3 months. So that's my first prediction, is I think the separation in the Eastern Conference is coming for the Boston Celtics here over the next, 30 games or so.
Well, I agree with you. First of all, nothing really bold about that. But here's the thing about predictions, all right? Bold predictions is really a lot of times a euphemism for just foolishness.
Wild take. Shoot from the head.
Yeah, I mean, and it's just whatever, man. And I guess that can be fun, and maybe you'll say things, and maybe even a couple of mine are kind of a little bit tongue in cheek. I don't really think it's going to happen, but at least you want to have some reality there. So look, I'm cool with it not being some outrageous take where you said that something the Heat are going to end up with the number 1 seed in the East or something crazy, right? So I'm okay with it. I see what you're saying though, where it does sort of trend a little bit more toward the bold side. Is that gap, that margin. Yeah. I mean, they're a game and a half back at Cleveland right now. Yeah. Cleveland has played them tough. Cleveland is for real. Obviously, you don't go 23-4, man. I don't care any stretch of an NBA season unless you're a really good team. So they're legit. We've all been impressed by what they've done this year. Their offense has been incredible. So you think they're going to continue to win at a really high rate. So for the Celtics to get, basically 6.5 games better than the Cavs the rest of the way to end up with a 5-game margin for the 1 seed, I think that is a little bit bold there because, and I don't think in any way that's you're dismissing what Cleveland's done. If I'm correct, nope. I think you're just saying that we haven't seen the best Boston has yet, and they're 21-5, so that's kind of scary. And I think there's truth in that because of the Porzingis situation and not getting a ton of continuity with those guys. I think that's probably fair to say that Boston's best basketball might be coming down the road. If that's the case, yeah, it might be difficult for Cleveland to keep pace.
I don't even know if their best basketball is coming up, although I do think it is. But I think more than anything, they're 21-5. They won all those games. What was it, 62 last year? it's not that when you look at this extended 2-year run that they're on, they've been winning at a 21-5 pace for a year and a half now. They go to the playoffs, they win at a 21-5 pace. So for me, I look at Boston and I go, this is just who they are. They win 20 out of 25 games, and they're that talented of a team. Meanwhile, you look at Cleveland and you say, are they going to be able to keep up that pace? They've had this incredible run, and they're a game and a half up. I think that they are a great team. I think they will finish as the 2 seed in the Eastern Conference, and I think they're going to have a phenomenal record. I just think that the number is going to normalize and Boston will overtake them. So that's my first one. Semi-bold, not really bold. They'll get a little bit more bold as we go. What's your first prediction?
My first prediction is that the Clippers are going to have a better record than the Lakers.
I like it.
Now, look, they already do.
Yeah, I was going to say they're tied right now, basically.
But I mean, the truth is, nobody expected that. So it's a combination of Lakers underperforming, in my opinion, and the Clippers being better than I thought they could be. And particularly, like, Harden's shooting splits aren't great, but he has been having to drive this whole thing. Paul George is gone. Kawhi hasn't played. It's been hard. And he's got a lot of help with some guys that have had good years for them, but nobody expected the Clippers to be sitting here, whatever number of games we are in, 30 games into the season practically, with a better record than the Lakers. So I think there's probably a lot of people out there. There are 27 games for the Clippers, 26 to the Lakers. A lot of people out there are probably thinking, well, this can't last. And that's where my prediction comes in. No, I think maybe it can. I think the Clippers consistently play harder defensively. Yeah. They compete. I like their group, and I haven't really liked watching the Clippers much at all. Probably since their best years when they had that core with Blake Griffin and Chris Paul and DeAndre Jordan, those guys early in their prime. So I enjoy watching them again. And I'm not a big Harden fan necessarily of like his style, but I have a lot of respect for what he's been able to do. Because he didn't expect to be having to do this at this stage of his career. He went out there to join with 2 other guys, and Westbrook at the time, and kind of just pick his spots when he needed to score. But for the most part, run the offense, facilitate, and leave the heavy lifting to Paul George and Kawhi Leonard. It didn't play out that way at all. And now he's like the only one left of that group. And he's having to do things on a given night that I didn't think he could do anymore. In a 40-point game the other night, I didn't think James Harden had those in him. So they've overachieved. Lakers have underachieved. It adds up to right now the Clippers with a half-game lead on them. And I'm saying I think they're gonna end up with a better record than the Lakers.
How much of this do you think has to do with your outlook on the Lakers going forward? I mean, because right now, both of them are down low in the standings, and I don't know if the Clippers are you predicting the Clippers are going to shoot up to like the 5-6 area, 4-5-6, or are you more predicting that the Lakers might fall out completely? I mean, they have a negative point differential, that their season's been very hot or cold. So which one, or do you think it's just a little bit of both?
I actually think that this is kind of where the Clippers are going to be, like somewhere in the play-in. Yeah. What I'm saying is, I'm starting to get concerned that the Lakers are at any point going to have a really big run in them. To jump out of this situation that they're in right now, and you look at it, they're a half game back of the 6th spot. So it's not like super heavy lift, but I expect Phoenix to be much better going forward. All right. I think Denver's going to be better. I think Dallas is going to be better. Houston, Memphis, and Oklahoma City are all legitimate. So what it's going to come down to is you're going to have to play better than you've played to this point to get out of the play-in. And do the Lakers have that in them? And I don't necessarily know that they do. I don't love what I see when I watch them play. And, look, who knows with LeBron? I mean, he missed some time. He had a stretch where he didn't play as well. You're starting to wonder, man, is it finally catching up to him a little bit? And they took a little time off, came back, played well in that game. But I do think there's going to be more patches for a guy that's about to turn 40 the second half of the year where maybe he misses some time. And if that's the case, I just don't know how the Lakers really keep their head above water, because they're not a great defensive team. They have to win because they can be really good offensively, and their 2 best players can be just great and win any matchup. But if LeBron's going to miss time or not be as good as he's been in the past, I think that's going to be very hard for the Lakers to do. Now, obviously, they're going to be active. They always are at the trading deadline. They're going to be looking. Maybe they add something that makes me feel differently. But as they sit here currently constructed, I think the Clippers, just consistent, hard style of play defensively, and what they have figured out how to run their offense, I just think it's something you could bet on a little bit more than the Lakers, who are wildly inconsistent.
Have you looked at their schedule? Because they have this thing that we absolutely hate. Their upcoming games at Sacramento, then at Sacramento again, then Detroit, Golden State on Christmas, then Sacramento again. 3 of their next 5 games are against the Sacramento Kings. Like such
That's
a
so
weird
bizarre.
and when you look at the standings right now, if either of those teams go 3-0, it makes a huge difference. You know, you flip the positioning there, and you really whichever team, if they were to lose all 3 of those games, would be big. Even 2-1. So the Kings and Lakers almost are going to one of those teams is likely to be put in a tough spot here just based on that matchup. What a weird schedule.
They're
My
like
number.
they're basically playing a first round playoff series from like
Yeah.
when was that? Like the 80s, they had best of 3 in the first round, like early
Yep.
80s, late 70s, something like that. That's basically what they're doing. Because you're right. They both can that. I mean, it's early, but that's big, man. Like those games are going to really matter a lot. 3 times in 9 days, I believe it is. It's a
So
lot. So
ridiculous.
anyway, I don't know if people think it's that bold, but I don't think anybody sat here going into the season and thought the Clippers were going to have a better record than the Lakers at this point or at any point in the season. And I think they actually have a decent shot of holding on.
My next prediction here for the Dallas Mavericks, you look at the Western Conference, everybody's bundled up. You can rise or fall really fast. And yet, I'm predicting that the Dallas Mavericks are going to, within the next week or two, be the 2 seed in the West, a position they will not give up for the rest of the year. I think they're going to become the 2 seed. And with all the log jamming in the West, they will hold on to the 2 seed all the way up until the playoffs.
What is it about them that you think, because to make a statement like that, you clearly think, as I just said about the Celtics, you know, potentially playing their best basketball coming up. You must think that about Dallas too. What is it that you think is going to be better? Is it just the fact that they got off to a slow start because Luka wasn't very good early, and he's going to be better now going forward? You would assume. What is your basis for thinking they're going to be that much better going forward?
All the metrics point to them being a lot better than their record indicates so far. You know, good offense, good defense. Luka hasn't necessarily been great. And I think they've had a period early on in the year where they were figuring out what the rotation was, who their guys were. I think they have a better sense of clarity for that. And yeah, I just think they're a really good team, and they're likely to look like a really good team going forward. I mean, they've been a good team for a while now, by the way. 8-2 in their last 10. So it's not like, you know, it's already begun. And I just kind of I think they're more the team they've been over the last, 13, 14 games than they were in the first 10. And I think it's just going to play out. And then on top of that, when you look at the other teams in the standings, you know, right now, what does it mean for them to get up to number 2? They're going to pass the Rockets and the Grizzlies. All right, I think that's likely. Those teams are very good, but I don't know that they can keep pace with the Oklahoma Cities and the Dallases. And then you look at Phoenix and Denver, and I'm with you. I'm high on both of them. But both of them are so volatile, as we've seen. When they miss key players, they go through these prolonged slumps. And if you tell me Phoenix is likely to miss Kevin Durant, Booker, Beal, yeah, I think that's likely to happen. Denver, they likely to be without some of their players. Yes, that's likely. Dallas more built to sustain it. And so I just think they're going to be – I think the West top 2 race might be a little boring this year. OKC, clearly the number 1 seed. And I think by the time we get to the All-Star break, Dallas might be clearly the number 2 seed, and you're fighting for all the other positions.
I like that. I mean, I also think, look, I don't know that Memphis is going to be in the mix for 2, but I'm impressed with what Memphis has been able to do in weathering the storm without Ja Morant for that stretch. They have found additional depth. I don't think they even knew they had with some of the guys that have played big minutes for them. And you look up, and there they are, 18-9, 2 seed in the West. I think they're going to be an interesting story all year. And we all expected this kind of rebound. That last year was an anomaly. The whole roster was hurt. And, you know, they're a bottom feeder in the league. And I called them the biggest X factor in the NBA going into the season because the level of talent on their roster, you know, you would think they were going to have a bounce back and get in the mix. And clearly they are here, sitting at the 2 seed in the West as we approach Christmas. That's pretty impressive. All right. I like that one a lot. My next one is going to be, I said to you before the season, and it was after a preseason game that I called, that the Detroit Pistons would be the most improved team in the NBA.
Ooh,
I think they might be. Here. I think they might be. All I'm saying is they won 14 games last year.
Yeah,
and
they're right there.
They're going to make the play-in.
Okay.
They're going to make the play-in. And people, if you don't think that's bold, that team won 14 games last year. So
yeah, but they have 11.
It.
They have 11 now, though. Like if you would have said that at the start of the year, it would have been more bold. But now.
Well, no, my point is to think any team that could make the play in a year after doing 14 games. Come on. So I think, look, I look at it right now. Those teams are Atlanta, Indiana, Chicago, Detroit. So Detroit basically, Philly's obviously, we expect to hear from them. They are a game and a half back of the 10 spot. You would expect Philadelphia to make up a lot of ground and easily get into the play-in. So really you're talking about then for Detroit, assuming Philadelphia leapfrogs them,
Yeah, you're
which I
right. Now that
think
I look
they
at it.
will, then
Yeah.
you're talking about basically outplaying Chicago,
Chicago. Yeah.
and certainly holding off Brooklyn, which I don't think they're very good. And that's really what we're talking about here. But I think for Detroit to be in basically a playoff game, because that's what those are, after the year they had a year ago with that losing streak that they had and how embarrassed their franchise was, with all these young guys on their roster, man, give JB Bickerstaff a lot of credit. That team, that you have to come play now against the Detroit Pistons. So that's my second one, man. I think they make the play in.
I like that one. You are talking like, so Philly gets in, I think it's the Bulls who have been rumored to be kind of tearing it down finally, probably 2 years too late, but looking to trade Levine, looking to get off of maybe even Vucevic. They're a team that I could see tanking. And by the way, same with Brooklyn. I mean, that's what the Schroeder trade did. They were winning too much. Now you get Schroeder out of there. They're probably going to be easy to hold off. So I think you're probably right. If I were to project it, I would say the 10 seed, they maybe match up with the 76ers in the play-in. And who knows what happens from there. So, all right, I like it. My last prediction for the end of the year, Giannis Antetokounmpo is going to win both the scoring title and the MVP. I think that is the thing. Like, if you look at it right now with your MVP candidates, it's always the same suspects as it's been for the last few years: Shea, Jokic, Giannis, Luka, Tatum. I think the Bucks are going to be the 3 seed. I think Giannis is going to win the scoring title. He's already right now number 1, and he has a little bit of a 1-point lead over that. He's scoring very effectively. They figured out a synergy with him and Dame. They need him to score because this isn't a thing where it's like, they settled things down, his scoring could go down. No, I think they're going to need him to score like this every night. And I think when he leads the league in scoring, puts up the efficiency and the all-around numbers that he has, and drags that team back up to the 3 seed in the East, I think he will become a 3-time MVP and the scoring champ.
I like that one, man. Look, he's been incredible. There's no other word for it. What he's done statistically, what they have done, that group, to weather, their start, because you talk about people coming for you, after what happened a year ago, and you start out 2-8. I mean, people were hunting to try to find out, like, blow this up, to
Right.
fire Doc. Doc wasn't, you name it. They said it about the Bucks, and here they are. And they clearly have used some of that doubt as motivation, I think. And I just think the chemistry between Giannis and Dame has been so good. I think that's a very solid take. Now you predict they're going to be the 3 seed.
Yeah.
Well,
they're right there right now. I mean, it's not that part's not that crazy of a take, because they're 14-11. The Knicks are 16-10. It's a game and a half.
So let me ask you a question. Do you think then it's a wrap on the 1 and 2 for Boston and Cleveland?
They're just so far ahead, and I don't see any of them going on an extended losing streak. I mean, they're 6 games right now ahead of the 3 seed. That's 6.5. That's a lot.
You're probably right. They probably end up 1-2 in some order, one or the other. Then you got Knicks and Orlando. Now, Orlando is in a tough spot here because they got 2 guys with torn obliques that are their 2 best players. And, I don't know what the time frame is right now, Banchero or Wagner. How are they going to be able to win enough games to stay up there while those guys are out? That's going to be a very difficult challenge. And then, of course, you got the Knicks who, I think the Knicks are going to be better going forward than they have been to this point.
Okay.
So, look, Milwaukee's going to have to – I think they're in the mix for that. They're going to have to play to earn that. I don't think there's any question. We just named the top 5 teams. I don't think anybody upsets that apple cart. I don't think Philly can get that high now. And I don't have enough belief in Miami, Atlanta, Indiana, any of those teams.
No way.
So I think we know who the top 5 are going to be.
Yeah, I agree.
And it's just a matter of how high Philly climbs. But if that's the case, and Giannis gets up as high as the 3 seed in the East, and what the number of wins that will take, and the numbers he obviously is going to have, you might be right. He could win another MVP. Now, what's interesting is if they do somehow stay in the 5 spot, let's just say, look historically at where MVPs come from.
Very rare.
It doesn't happen often, man. And I was just trying to look it up because I didn't know where you were going with that.
Westbrook and Jokic.
I don't have that data to know. And you don't have to go back forever. But like in the last 20 years, what's the lowest seeded MVP? Was it Westbrook?
Westbrook and Jokic, I think both were a 6 seed, but we can have James look it up right now and get back to us. But
It
it's
doesn't
going to
happen
be something
often,
like that.
but it can happen. And you look in the
Yeah.
West, man. I mean, obviously Jokic has MVP numbers too, and they're also in the 5th spot.
Yep. So they might, and I think they'll have a harder time climbing in the West than Milwaukee will in the East.
And I think Adam, here's the bigger point in the East, especially when you look at the teams ahead of them right now. It is hard of the Bucks. I mean, it is hard to imagine one of those guys winning MVP off those teams. Like, I feel like Tatum and Braun cannibalize each other, and no one else is winning an MVP off that team except those guys. So they could win 65 games, and I feel like neither one of those guys gets real consideration. It's crazy. Jason Tatum, it's wild. He got more consideration every year when he had less help. As soon as they got him this team that looks like a super team, now it's like, okay, Jason Tatum can't be MVP anymore. And I don't think Jaylen Brown's going to get that consideration. I don't think Donovan Mitchell rings the bell like that for people. No. He just doesn't. No. Even when you look at the Vegas odds on MVP right now, it's like no one's expecting that. I don't know how you feel about Brunson. If the Knicks got red hot and somehow the Knicks ended up like, in the 2 seed, somehow they caught one of these two teams, or they were a close 3 seed, I guess maybe Brunson could, but I don't know that Brunson's having the same kind of year he's had the last 2. So that would be weird. He'd get it now.
No chance.
When he didn't win it one of the other 2 years. And then I don't think either one of those Orlando guys now, especially now with all the time they're going to miss. And I just don't think they're viewed that way. So Giannis to me has that path. It's a little harder, I think, for like Jokic in the West. If Oklahoma City continues to do this and Shea puts up these kind of numbers, he's going to get a lot of consideration and probably get more votes than Jokic would. But I see what you're saying in the East. I think for Giannis, he's got like that mantle as best player in the conference as long as they end up somewhere in the top 5.
And I even think, to put a little sweetener on it, I think the Emirates Cup win might actually become a swing factor. Because as you mentioned, Shea, I think people are going to wonder, his team's really good. So are they going to give it to him? Luka, maybe the slower start or this or that. Like there's going to be a knock everybody kind of looks at. And you just start to get to like these tiebreaker things. And I wonder if Giannis did win the Emirates Cup. So that's a swing factor that gives him that, again, if everything else lines up. All right, what's your last prediction?
My last one is one of those top 6 in the West, as we sit here right now, is going to make a major blockbuster trade at the trading deadline. And I wouldn't be surprised if Oklahoma City finally cashed in some of those assets. And I'm not saying they're going to overreact. They're not going to overreact to what happened the other night. I don't necessarily think, but I also do think, they do they feel like, hey man, we need to, try to go for it this year, or they just say, hey, no matter what happens, we think we can win it all this year, but maybe we don't, but we're trending in that direction because of how young we are. We just added, Hartenstein, him and Chet, they're not going to get a ton of time to mesh this year. So, maybe it's inconclusive, or do they say, man, we got all these assets. Sam Presti walks around and 2nd-round picks fall out of his pocket when he reaches for his keys. Like, they got so many things. You know how I feel about 2nd-round picks too, by the way, Adam. You know how valuable I think they are.
You love them, man. You love them. You're all in.
Yeah. 8 of those add up to the lunch I got sitting over here to my left, the sandwich I'm eating. But the point is, people around the league do value them, and wouldn't be even surprised if they dabbled. And if not, wouldn't be shocked if you saw Denver do something. Wouldn't be shocked if you saw Phoenix do something big.
Agreed. Yeah.
And not more than just like a little, okay, we added a nice little rotational role player. No, I'm talking about something that's bigger than that. So that's my prediction. One of those teams is going to make that move.
I love this one. This might be the best of all 6 of the ones we took, because you're right. We're talking about high profile teams, and you just said top 6. I mean, you could even throw Golden State in there, Minnesota. Maybe they try to move off of Randall or something and add a piece. Did the Lakers do something? But yes, Oklahoma City to me. By the way, as you were talking, I'm looking this up because I just opened up the standings. The Thunder are on a 5-game win streak officially. We all know they just lost to the Bucks, but that game doesn't count. So they're on a 5-game win streak.
Let me ask you a question, because the stats don't count for that game either.
Right.
What if Shai Gilgeous-Alexander scored 101 points in that game?
No, he wouldn't have counted. It would have been an
We got a
unofficial number
problem,
one.
Houston. Houston, we have a problem. If somebody breaks some guy gets 38 points in a quarter, breaks Clay's record. Somebody gets 31 dimes in that game, breaks Scott Skiles' record, right?
Yeah.
List goes on, right? It could happen, man. Or what's Clay's record for threes? Like 14?
Yeah, something like that.
All right.
Somebody does that in the game. You're right. You're right.
What if Dame hits 15 threes, but never happened? Never happened.
Well, I mean, even funnier would be currently, if the Thunder go on this extended run, they win the next 20 games. Do they have the longest win streak in NBA history, even though they lost a game in between there? It just doesn't happen.
There you go. Oh, it's just weird. It's in a vacuum. What took place in Vegas really does stay in Vegas, apparently.
There you go. The Thunder on a 5-game win streak, everybody. All right, let's take a break. On the other side of this, we got to get into some standout players who have surprised us. We did the all disappointment team last week. We'll start to do the opposite of that, people that stand out. So stay tuned. We'll be back here in just a moment. Let me tell you guys about HelloFresh. With HelloFresh, you get farm fresh, pre-portioned ingredients and seasonal recipes delivered right to your doorstep. Skip trips to the grocery store and count on HelloFresh to make home cooking easy, fun, and affordable. That's why it's America's #1 meal kit. And it's really great this time of year when you're trying to make lifestyle changes because they have 50 new recipes every single week on their website. You just log on and you pick out the ones that you want them to send right to your door. It'll come pre-portioned, so you'll have all of the ingredients, clear to read instructions, and really fun meals for you to expand your week-by-week rotation. We all know what happens. You get into the year, you're eating the same meals every week. It gets monotonous. You get bored of what you're eating. Maybe you want to learn a new cooking skill. Well, you hop on, you get 50 recipes to choose from, and a lot of these can be specific to whatever diet, high protein, low carb, vegetarian and vegan options. They got all these different ones. So you pick out what looks good, they send it to you, and it's so easy to make. The instructions are so clear, and it's even fun. It can make for a little stay-at-home date night with you and your partner where you can get something new to cook. You learn something through the experience of cooking that, and maybe you find a new favorite meal that becomes part of your rotation. It's a really cool service. And I highly recommend it, especially for the new year when you're trying to get into new habits. And right now we have this incredible deal. You get 10 free meals at HelloFresh.com/freeNBA. Remember, use that so it tracks back to us and you get this great deal. 10 free meals at HelloFresh.com/freeNBA. It's applied across 7 boxes. New subscribers only, and varies by plan. But it's 10 free HelloFresh meals just by going to HelloFresh.com/freeNBA. HelloFresh, America's #1 meal kit. Also want to tell you guys about FanDuel. You can get ready for the weekend's NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more, all on the same page that you place your bets. Visit FanDuel.com/all-NBA, all one word, FanDuel.com/all-NBA, and you get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com/all-NBA. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Must be 21 and older, located in Colorado. First online real money wager only. $5 first deposit required. Bonus issued as non-withdrawable bets, which expire 7 days after receipt. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. And if you have a gambling problem, call or text 1-800-522-4700. All right, back here, segment 2 with Tim Legler. Everybody, make sure you throw us a like if you're enjoying the stream. Make sure you subscribe. We're doing this 4 times a week. Tomorrow, some really good games, Legs. We've got the Knicks and Timberwolves. Karl-Anthony Towns going back to Minnesota. That one should be fun. Lakers and Kings, as we mentioned. Clippers, Mavs, really good game. Warriors, Grizzlies. So we'll have plenty to talk about tomorrow, Legs.
Games, buddy. That's what we're looking for. Give me some games. Give me some live action. Looking forward to watching tonight again.
All right, so now our all surprise standouts team. This is the opposite of our disappointment ones. We didn't want to just go stars, although maybe you have some stars mixed in there. And let's do the same thing where we go back and forth with some players. I'm curious. Legs and I always do this thing where we make our list independently and they always match up. So I'm curious to see if any of these match up here. I'll start us off. My first guy, Payton Pritchard. Payton Pritchard has raised his scoring by 7 points. He's taking 9 threes a game and shooting 43.5%. Him and Derek White, by the way, I think Sam Esfandiari put this on Twitter and it blew my mind. Derek White and Payton Pritchard are taking more threes than Steph and Clay took in 2015 and shooting the same percentages that those guys shot. Remember how revolutionary it was that the Splash Brothers were taking all those threes? Payton Pritchard and Derek White are taking more and with the same efficiency. He's been incredible. And right now, out of the 98 players to have run 100 pick and rolls in a season, at least, he is generating the highest points per possession, 1.277 points per possession on pick and rolls. Payton Pritchard, of all players, he's been phenomenal this year.
He was on my list, but I pared it down. He didn't make my final five.
Oh, okay.
So I wrote down like 7-8 names. He was one of those guys. Definitely jumped out to me right away. And one of I don't know how you do this. Usually when we come up with these lists, typically I just click on like standings, and I just start going down the teams, right? And so you're right there near the top. So he jumped out to me right away. So Payton Pritchard, I totally agree. And man, he's on a heater right now. Like these last few games. He got his money. Good for him. I love watching the guy play. It's amazing when you watch him in person, how quick he is, how quick his feet move defensively. Very fun player to watch.
And I feel real quick, one last thing on him. He almost has added this like Jalen Brunson-esque part to his game where he'll run the pick and roll and get the defender in jail because he's quick, right? You think of him as a guy with the threes, but he also has the slow down game where he gets you on the hip and he just goes real slow and inches his way to compromising the defense. And it's just a new wrinkle to his game that makes him, again, like Jalen Brunson's a superstar player. Payton Pritchard gets to act like a superstar in these tiny little moments throughout the game when he gets to do those types of things.
And I think the final thing on this, I think what it really, what it does is it's a great selection because it's given the Celtics another legitimate weapon. Like this guy hurts teams. Yeah. And, he was a role player for them before. Yeah, he was like a role player, but now he's more than a role player for them. He's an impact player for them. And they already had enough. So you were always wondering like, well, where else are they going to get growth from when, their top 5 guys are like that good and that versatile. Everybody else kind of just gets their minutes when they can, and they pick up the crumbs a little bit around those guys. But that's not what Pritchard's doing. Pritchard's going out there and he's having big quarters for them. He's having big games for them. It's an additional weapon. It makes the Celtics even better. So even more difficult to knock out at some point. All right.
And real quick, that stat came from Jared Dubin. When I get the stat from somebody else's work, Jared Dubin does Last Night in Basketball. He's the one that I read that stat from. So shout out to him.
I like that. All right. My first one is a guy that we've talked about a decent amount on this show already this year, but how else can I look at the Eastern Conference in particular and not mention Franz Wagner? Right. To me, and I got to put him down because he has so surpassed what I thought his ceiling was as an NBA player offensively that it's kind of blown me away. It's a big deal when you go from, just under 20 a year ago. That's a really good NBA season, man. I didn't know if that's kind of where his peak was going to be because to get it to where he's at now, which is like 24 a game, you've got to add stuff offensively that you're capable of with your handle, with your range, with your step back, just ways to get shots off. And he was put under a lot of pressure when Banchero went down. Like what is going to happen to the Magic? Like how are they going to be able to generate enough offense? And look at what this guy has done. So for me, he's at the very top of the list in surpassing expectations for me. And more importantly, the impact he's had on making his team win games and be relevant and not drop off because they're missing their overall best player.
The thing that's a bummer about Franz and about Orlando is, obviously his great stretch this year came when Powell went down. He got off to a little bit of a clunky start and then immediately took over. And I don't think it's because he can't play with him, but it is one of those things when you have a young team, those building years are so important. And it just sucks that I don't know how much we're going to see those two guys together this year, at least for a while. So that's a good one. My guy, Franz Wagner, for sure. Next guy I have on my list is, there it is. The next guy I have on my list is Tyler Herro. 10 threes per game, by far the most efficient season of his career high in assists and legs. He's done it all. There's a great article by Cooper Moorhead today. He's done it all by eliminating the mid-range from his game. He has this great quote in that article by Cooper Moorhead where he talks about the fourth quarter is for mid-range. I try not to take them unless I have to, late shot clock or something in the first 3 quarters. In the fourth quarter, that's when it's like, okay, everything goes. But by doing that, it's almost like it's brought clarity to his game, more efficiency to his game. And he's shooting that thing, man. He's taking tough threes, off the dribble threes in pick and roll, 2-3 dribbles, pull up, and he is just draining them.
I think that's a great one. Look, it's his best year. And,
Yep.
you kind of thought you got a pretty good feel who Tyler Herro is. And for some reason, man, like it'll click for guys around this age where everything kind of comes together for you and the opportunity comes together for you as well. But more importantly, you get off to a good start. And it's like, it seems like it sets this table for your whole year. And your confidence is through the roof. And that's what I watch Tyler Herro right now play. That's how he looks. He is so sure of himself and what he's capable of doing right now. And I think some of the inconsistencies he dealt with earlier in his career was a little bit frustrating for the Heat. And this year, man, it's been pretty much night after night. Tyler Herro's getting it done. I like this pick a lot.
Yep. All right. Who do you got next?
My next one, you said you didn't know if we had any like stars on this list. I guess this guy would be considered that. I'm going to go with Karl-Anthony Towns.
Yeah, that's a good one, man. This is good.
Karl-Anthony Towns, I think whenever I did it, I thought it was fair. If I was critical of Karl-Anthony Towns in the past, there were some things about him that I just wasn't sure about when he was in Minnesota. This guy's been sensational since he got to New York. And one of the things that I think everybody was wondering was, like, is he going to be able to embrace that type of light? Because it wasn't like that in Minnesota.
Right.
It just wasn't.
Right.
Minnesota was a really good team last year. They went to the conference finals. It's not the same level of scrutiny. We all could admit that. That especially with the Knicks' success a year ago. That Garden is electric. The media can be tough. The fan base can be tough if it's not going well. And here goes Karl-Anthony Towns. The Knicks had such a great year. They make a big trade, big roll of the dice, man. Let's hope this fits and works. And you can't say enough about what this guy has done this year. Just under 25 points a game, 14 boards. I mean, he's played physical. He's played inside out. I think it's the most physical rebounding I've ever seen Karl-Anthony Towns do. And I just want to pat the guy on the back, man, because it couldn't have been a totally easy situation for him to come into this and then outplay expectations. And he's done it. So I give him a lot of credit.
And on the upswing, like when we were talking earlier about Milwaukee, and I predict they'll be the 3 seed. The truth is he is on the upswing. The Knicks are on the upswing, and it's almost 50-50 who is going to be able to hold on. And Karl-Anthony Towns has been a big part of that. So I think he's a great one. My next guy, Legs, how often is it a guy in his age 31 season sets a new career high for points per game? I would guess.
Know who this is, and I think I got the same guy.
If you get to age 31 and all of a sudden you're having career scoring outputs, by the way, on huge efficiency, you get to be on this list. And that's, of course, Norman Powell. His year 10, and he's setting a career high points per game. He's legit number 2 scoring option, 48% from 3 on 8 per game. 48%? That's the highest of any of the volume 3-point shooters, guys that are taking like a lot of them. He's just been lights out. And, it's Harden and Norman Powell as the offense out there. And then you get a little Zubats, cleaning everything up, getting all the passes. But those two guys are the ones that are keeping them afloat.
If Norman Powell has an average year for the Clippers, which is still solid, right? Because he's had a good career. If he has an average year, the Clippers probably have won 5 less games.
You're right. No question. 2 against Denver. They have 2 wins against Denver where he was incredible.
Yeah, and so that alone, man, you're 100% right. And guys don't typically do that. Like he had one other year where he averaged over 20. His first year he got to the Clippers in 21-22, he averaged over 20 points a game. Prior to that, he was like upper teens in Toronto, just under 20. And you think like, okay, that's kind of the peak. But now he's older. You're right, and he's coming off a year in which he averaged 14 points a game. And now obviously the team looked different, and Paul George isn't there anymore, and Kawhi's not playing at all. So the opportunities came his way. Doesn't mean you're going to be able to deliver at this level. The guy's shooting 48% from the 3-point line. High volume too, 8 a night. So I love it. He was on my list. This was an easy one for me. I think Wagner, Cat, and Norman Powell, those 3 were the easiest 3 right off the bat, jumped out at me. And then I had a few other guys. Pritchard was in that category. So I'm glad we both got that one. That seemed to me to be a pretty obvious one.
You got another one?
Say that again?
You got another one?
Yeah, I got another one. it's going to be a guy you're very familiar with. I'm going to go with Christian Braun.
Hey, he was on my list too.
Was he good? Yeah. I mean, again, look, I loved him from the day he got to the league. It's just because he's very competitive, man. He's really tough, but like also businesslike. Everything about him is just like next play. I love his demeanor on the court. He's athletic. He's strong. He likes to guard people. He's a great slasher. He was a super streaky 3-point shooter coming into this season. And look, KCP wasn't a guy that was getting you 15, 20 a night, but he was such a good defender, and he was more consistent with the 3-point shooting. That was a big loss. And now you knew Christian Braun was going to be elevated to the starting spot. I really didn't know what to expect from him. And man, has he embraced this. I mean, he is showing you how bright his future is going to be, because he looked incredibly comfortable jumping into that role. Numbers, 35 minutes a game, big increase there, obviously. 15 points a night.
That's a lot.
57% from the field, and he's taking, 3 threes a game, 40%. So he's selective with his threes because he knows that's not necessarily his wheelhouse. But guys that shoot 2.5, 3 threes a game that aren't pure shooters don't shoot 40% from the three. Those guys shoot 31% from the three. He's been a lot better than that, and he's still giving you the defense, the slashing, the athleticism. He gets you a highlight reel dunk every couple of games that energizes his team. A crowd favorite. He's had a great year, man. He has really stepped into those shoes and stepped into that spot and jumped all over it.
It's a great one. All the reasons you laid out. And 15 points per game is a lot for a guy that was a non-scorer. I mean, he's not a scorer. I think that's more than he scored in college. And he's doing this now in the NBA. It's very surprising. Definitely deserving. My last guy on my list, because I had Christian Braun as well. The last guy I had was Dyson Daniels, of course. My guy again. Go ahead and play the sound. 3.4 steals per game. He's one of 4 players in the history of the league, Legs, to get 3.4 steals per game. He still has to figure out his offensive game, even though he's up 8 points per game. He's not a very efficient player. The team has been fine when he's on offense, but to me, he has single-handedly changed the personality of that team and opened up Trae Young's game, allowed Jalen Johnson to be what he is. I think he completes that team, and he's just been phenomenal.
Love it. I'm going to give my last one right now because I think we're going to move on to the next category, but I just want to touch on this guy. I didn't want to leave him off the list. Evan Mobley was on my list too.
Great one.
He's just better. Like, his numbers aren't dramatically better, Adam. Like, he went from 16 to 18. Shooting splits are pretty close to the same, but he is taking more threes and he's making more threes. He's not a high volume guy. I've always contended I think he's going to get there. I think he can get to be a guy that takes 5 or 6 a night and makes a couple. And he'll just extend their team offensively even more than they are now. He's a huge reason. His growth. I mean, Mitchell's been pretty much what he's been throughout his career. Darius Garland, he's been an all-star. Like, he's played very well. The difference for me with their team this year, more often than not, particularly offensively, is Evan Mobley. Evan Mobley's consistently producing at a high rate. And I thought he was quiet last year sometimes when I would watch him. You wouldn't notice him as much. Too deferential. Not necessarily anticipating being open last year. That's all out the window now. And he's only 23 years old. He's in his 4th season. By far, I think his best season. So he's shown me that he did put the time in the work in and understood there had to be an adjustment psychologically for him this year to be more aggressive, to make their team more legitimate as a contender. And I think he's as big a part of their emergence this year and where we view them as anybody on that roster.
I love it, man. That's our list of surprise standouts. Let us know in the live chat or in the comments below who are your surprise standouts. Who did we miss? Is there somebody that we did not mention that you think deserves it? Let us know in the comments. We always like hearing from you guys. All right. The last thing we were going to do here was we were going to talk about the team that we think is most interesting going forward, that really intrigues us. And we did not talk, and yet we both came up with the exact same team, and I'm guessing for the exact same reasons, because there's multiple reasons, and that is the Phoenix Suns. We both think they are the most interesting team to monitor here over the next month or two. Why did you put them on your list?
Well, first of all, because they went this long stretch without Kevin Durant, and they couldn't win games, but they were pretty damn good at the start of the year with Kevin Durant. And he's back now, and they won a couple of games here, and two bad teams, Utah and Portland. But it's obvious that how stark of a difference this team is with and without Kevin Durant.
Yeah.
And so now he's back, and hopefully he stays back. And this is what I said about them before the year. I thought I was going to change the narrative on them. I was over the first couple weeks of the season. And then, it just guys missing time again, and especially him. And here they go, this middling type team. They lose games. They're back around a 500 team. And now he's back. And I think when you look at not only the fact that they were so good with him at the start of the year, and because I've talked about the new pieces, I love Tyus Jones' addition. I like Ryan Dunn a lot. I like Plumlee. So they've rounded out the margins. Monte Morris, they've added guys that I like. And now it was, okay, can their top three guys stay on the court and play together? And let's see what that looks like over an extended period of time. They hadn't really done it. Let's hope that happens now. And if it does, I think you're going to see the Suns start to climb a little bit from where they're at right now. The other reason I picked them is because just looking at their schedule, they've got two teams in the East that are not, I wouldn't describe them as bad teams. One is an underachiever right now in Indiana, and then they've got an overachiever in Detroit, but neither one of those teams, and they're both of those games are at home. So you got to take care of business in those two games. And then it starts a stretch out and where they've got Denver back-to-back, Dallas, Golden State, Memphis. Yep. So you've got 5 games against 4 different teams, extremely relevant in the Western Conference with Durant. It's going to give you a much better idea of what the Phoenix Suns are. And I think they have a good chance of doing some things during that stretch. And if they do, things are going to get very interesting for the Phoenix Suns again. And we're going to be talking about them a lot in a positive way, I think, the second half of the year.
You never know about their health, and that's why it's hard to get too excited about them in the regular season. But your point is 100% correct. They're 13-2 with Kevin Durant in the lineup. That's incredible. 1-9 without him. That's also incredible. That's really bad. And what it's been is the defense. Kevin Durant, when he has been on the court and when he has been in the rotation, their defense has been very good because they've added some defensive pieces around him. But then he can become the rim protector. He's so long, athletic, mobile, good timing. So he completes their defense. But when you take him out, their defense is terrible. I look at it, I say Devin Booker hasn't necessarily been great. He's been very good when Kevin Durant's there, but he is almost the biggest beneficiary of Kevin Durant being back because he can play a little bit more natural. They're playing a lot of minutes right now. Just Kevin Durant and Booker, when they're healthy, they're playing like 37, 36 minutes, which is, you probably want to see that number come down to sustain their health. So all of those reasons are why they are the most interesting team, but there's one that makes them the most interesting. And that is, the more I think about it, the more I think it makes a lot of sense for them to be the Jimmy Butler destination. For one, it works out because you have Bradley Beal, and we've always wondered this idea of the big three. Do you lose a little something because there's only one ball? Their offense is already good. Do you need what Beal provides? I personally don't think they do. But Jimmy Butler provides a defensive versatility that I think they absolutely need. Beal for Butler works. I think you have to add in like a Richardson to make it work. You could send Richardson to a third party, but there is a mechanism to make it so that trade could work. Beal has the no trade clause. He would be the first player ever to deny a trade to the Miami Heat. I don't think a player in the NBA history has ever said, no, I don't want to go to Miami. So if Miami was interested in that deal, Phoenix, I think what it would come down to is Phoenix has a 2031 first round pick that they would probably, I think Miami is going to be able to squeeze them out. There's other suitors. I think they could force that pick to be involved in it. But if I'm Phoenix, I look at it and I go, Ishbia went all in on building this super team. And so far it has not gotten over the hump. Kevin Durant only gets older from here. That team can win a championship this year. If they got Jimmy Butler and everything broke right, I think that team could vault into that top tier. Do they pull the trigger on it? To me, it just makes, the more I think about it, the more I think it makes perfect sense.
Yeah, I was going to be my follow-up point as well. That's the other reason, is because like that makes a lot of sense. I said one of those teams in the West is going to make a big move. That might be the one we're talking about. The question is like, what is Miami? How does Miami view that? I do think to a certain extent it's run its course with Jimmy Butler there. And even some of the stuff that happened at the end of the year, Pat Riley kind of expressed some frustration, and he doesn't seem to take the regular season all that seriously. He doesn't have big splashy games, but I saw some people over here questioning, like, is Jimmy still that? And I'm telling you, I still think Jimmy Butler can be a just fantastic playoff performer.
Yeah.
And that's what this is about for this team. He would be a big time upgrade defensively, because people were like, well, can he still guard like that? Well, he can guard better than Bradley Beal. Yes. And he's bigger. He doesn't play exactly the same style as Devin Booker, which Beal does, which I think that ultimately that's not great for their offense. Butler's a different element, the way that he plays. He'd be an upgrade defensively. He's bigger. He can guard bigger guys, bigger wings. You'd have an answer for that in the West, which you need. And I also think he's capable of turning it up offensively on given nights, and he gets to the line still 8 times a game. Yeah. And that's important in the playoffs. Like he's won games for the Heat just by getting to the line because he's so good at drawing fouls, particularly in the playoffs. So I do think there's a lot of juice there. He needs to be energized by the situation. I don't think he necessarily is anymore in Miami. I don't think we view them as a team. If they stand pat, they're not making any noise in the Western Conference. And that Jimmy Butler probably knows that. You go out to this situation and you're playing with Devin Booker and Kevin Durant.
Game changer.
That team, that might be exactly what Jimmy Butler needs to energize him to give us another great playoff run and really make the Suns, after he plays with them 6-8 weeks, if that happens, make us all look at them differently as a legitimate team that's tough enough and well-rounded enough offensively to be able to get it done and make a long run in the postseason. So that's the other reason. This has been rumored a lot of conversation. I don't know if that's enough. I don't know if that's enough for Miami to get back. Like,
if
I
you
don't
get
know.
the 2031, here's the thing. If you get the 2031 pick, Miami's not the team that I think wants to build slowly. So that would become a trade asset. But if you're looking at this Suns team has traded away all assets. They only have that one. 2031 will be after the bill is due. If you get an unprotected 2031 pick from Phoenix, that becomes an incredible trade piece. Because I look at that and I go, that's probably a lottery pick. Just based on what the Phoenix Suns will be able to do. So
yeah, that's a good point. I mean, by that time, certainly, like you're done with Kevin Durant. You're done with Jimmy Butler. Devin Booker will be getting up there if he's even there. You're talking about
there.
Yeah. So who knows what they look like? That lottery pick could actually end up being a very meaningful high pick at that point. So for all those reasons, I do think the Suns are the team. I'm going to be watching and looking forward to seeing what they're about to do here over the next, several weeks leading into the trading deadline, and then what they do at the deadline.
Yeah. And if they got Jimmy Butler, that team we were just talking about, to me, I would put them in tier 1 in the Western Conference, where I would say, you know what, they have as good of a shot as Dallas, as good of a shot as Oklahoma City of coming out of the West. And that team would just be a really unique, tough matchup for everybody. All right, we got to get out of here, but we're going to end with our segment we do every week now, presented by FanDuel. It's our weekly shout out, where we shout out somebody or some team. This is presented. Oh, look, we got some funky music. All right. This is presented by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Get started with 150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet at FanDuel.com/AllNBA. All right, Legs, who did you choose to shout out this week?
I'm going to go a little bit off the grid here. I'm going to shout out the University of Iowa women's basketball program for the decision to retire Caitlin Clark's jersey. It sounds ridiculous. Obviously, we're going to do that. And I got me thinking, Adam.
Yeah.
With what she did, is that even enough? Like, I feel like we should.
They should retire. I feel like
we should rename the state capital Clarksville. Like, it's got to be bigger than a jersey, or like you. Every player on the team wears her number.
It's like the opposite. Yeah.
Yeah, they go the opposite way. Everybody in the stands has to wear a Caitlin Clark jersey to get admission. So every single, I don't know if that's enough for what she has done, not only for Iowa basketball, but just for the women's game in general. So, but that was a pretty cool thing, pretty cool announcement to hear. Also, she was at the Time Person of the Year, which is pretty cool for her.
I didn't even see that. Wow.
Or the Athlete of the Year, whatever it was. She was honored by
Okay,
Time Magazine. It was a pretty big honor for her as well. So she had a pretty big week, but I'm going to credit the Iowa women's team for now making that announcement of Caitlin Clark.
Easiest call ever, man. I mean, if she doesn't get her jersey retired, I don't know who.
I mean, they should name the gym after her.
They really should, man.
Forget the jersey retirement. That's happened to a lot of people, man. Make it something super unique.
I like it. That's a good one. My shout out this week goes to the Minnesota Timberwolves defense. If you're going to buy the Minnesota Timberwolves, it's because you're going to buy them as the best defense, or at least in the conversation for best defense. And then they've got Ant, they've got Randall, they got guys that can make stuff happen on offense, but you're not scoring on them. That wasn't the case for the first month. They did not look like the same defensive team, but over the last 10 games, #1 on that end. And you know where it all started, Legs? It started with Anthony Edwards calling out his team and saying, we don't even talk to each other. We're so soft. We're not holding each other accountable. Since that moment, this team has become what they are supposed to be, which is a defensive juggernaut that has just enough talent to get the thing done in the half court. To me, the Timberwolves, we just talked about all these teams that could rise. The Timberwolves are too far down, 14-11. They're a week or two away. I want to see which way things break. But the fact that their defense has been number one over the last 10 games in the NBA, just 99.3 defensive rating, tells me that they're figuring it out.
That's a good sign, man. So now it's going to develop the cohesion offensively and see if that defense keeps you in games, man. It gives you a chance until you figure out how to make your offense better. By the way, I don't know if I messed up James. Did he put up a graphic on the shout out of what I originally was going to say? I don't know. I didn't know because I saw a graphic over yours. Did he put up a Giannis graphic when I was about to do that?
He swerved on you, James. He swerved on you.
I'm quick on my feet.
I didn't mean to do that to you, James. It kind of just popped in my head because I just saw an article about this morning. But let me just real quick then. The original shout out was going to be Giannis, and here's why I want to give his flowers. The guy took that thing more seriously than anybody else. His leadership and intensity is still something to marvel at. How hard that guy competes every second, doing everything the right way, leading his team, and understanding the importance of something symbolic like that for that group with the way their year started, to not just have a nice run in the cup and then lose once you get to Vegas. No, finish it off. And it was all about his energy, enthusiasm, his vocal leadership, all of it. He set the tone for those guys, and I still I admire him so much for the way he goes about his business.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, cue that outro music there, James. Did we have any super chats today? I don't think I saw any come in.
No super chats today, but I did have one photo of you guys in case the fans want to see it behind the scenes of you guys preparing your predictions today.
Okay, what was it? Let's see. Oh my goodness, there you go.
You guys
we saw the
like that.
ball.
Karnak the Magnificent.
There you go, man. Everybody, we appreciate you guys tuning in with us for the show. We are doing this 4 times a week. We're back tomorrow. Really good NBA slate tonight, including my Denver Nuggets. Maybe we'll talk about them tomorrow. So you want to tune in. And make sure you're subscribed. Support the show. Leave us a 5-star rating and review wherever you get your podcast. Those help us out a lot. Tell a friend about it. Retweet our stuff on social media. It always helps grow the show. Hit that like button on the way out. We'll see you guys tomorrow.
All silly like the mayor.